Hello and welcome to the big picture. Nepal is in the throes of yet another political crisis. The latest one has been caused by the withdrawal of support by the Maoists to the CPN-UML government led by KP Oli day before yesterday. Oli now faces a no-confidence motion. Meanwhile, the Maoists, while withdrawing support, charged Oli of reneging on the promises he had made in May when on the verge of losing his government had struck a 9-point agreement with Maoists, including a gentleman's agreement to vacate his post after the budget is passed. The other promise, albeit in a roundabout way, was to provide blanket amnesty for human rights abusers over the decade-long Maoist insurgency. None of it apparently has been kept up. The Maoist, led by Pushpakumar Dahal, also known as Prachanda, has already got a written support from Nepali Congress, the largest party in the parliament, to form a government. We will look at the developments in Nepal and the role of India and how the change in the government will affect the relations and also the role of China. To discuss this, I have with me DP Tripathi, who will be an NCP MP in Rajya Sabha and also a close follower of Nepali politics, Rakesh Sood, former ambassador, Professor S.D. Muni, South Asia Analyst, Prashant, Associate Editor, Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sood, how do you look at these developments?
Well, you know, this is kind of a repeat of what happened in May, because in May we saw that Prachand had withdrawn support, but then there was this agreement under which Prime Minister Oli said that after the budget was approved and budget was presented and approved, he would hand over power to Prachand and support his claim to Prime Ministership. Now, obviously, that has not happened, and Prachand has carried out his threat. So it was, I think, a change that was just waiting to happen.
So you don't expect the repeat of what happened in May now? This is a fight to the finish.
I think, well, in Nepali politics, I don't think there is anything that is a fight to the finish. But I do think that we will see probably Prachand take over as Prime Minister sooner rather than later.
Mr. Tripathi?
Yeah.
How would you agree with Mr. Sood there?
Entirely. See, Mr. Sood has, I think, the deepest knowledge of Nepali politics as India's ambassador there, and he has handled quite critical conditions. And I would say that what he's saying, I'll take that argument further. People are talking about a big crisis in Nepal in Indian media.
Yes.
I told them there is no crisis. See, what has happened is what he says. The agreement has not been implemented. Therefore, Prachand has withdrawn support. There is an understanding between Nepali Congress, the largest party in Nepalese parliament, and the Maoist, Pushpakamal Dahal's party. Even Madhesis have made their position clear that they will support the government from outside. So, in terms of numbers, the no confidence motion is going to be passed.
Mr. Tripathi, sorry to intervene. A government which is on the verge of falling is a political crisis, whether we like it or not.
No, it is. See, what happens? The government support has been withdrawn, government is in minority. But I know the crisis in Nepal is manifold. It is within the party, there are various views. Within UML also, which is currently the ruling party, led by Mr. Oli, there are many leaders. And then differences among the coalition partners. Then those who are outside the coalition, they also matter in the broad political context of Nepal. Therefore, what I am saying is now position has clarified itself. It has become clear. Nepali Congress, as Mr. Sood said, has said that they will support the new dispensation in Nepal. They will vote for the no confidence motion. Madhesis are also saying that they are likely to support the government from outside. So, what you, Mr. Nikam, described as crisis, political crisis rightly, is more or less towards
He's on the verge of being solved. He's on the verge of being solved.
It will be the 9th, if Prachand becomes the Prime Minister shortly, then it will be the 9th Prime Minister in the last 8 years.
Exactly.
So I think we have seen this thing unfold periodically in Nepal.
Professor Muni, the question is, on what basis has this latest round of crisis happened? You think there is a principle involved in this? There are certain principles on the basis of which this crisis occurred?
Well, I think one principle involved is how to deal with the cases of insurgency time. And this is which has been bugging the Maoists to a very large extent.
This question of providing some blanket amnesty.
Yes, a blanket amnesty is not a word which the Maoists are using. What they are using is that such cases must go to Truth and Reconciliation Commission rather than being dealt by the ordinary criminal law. And some of the political parties want to fix the Nepali Congress leadership and the Maoist leadership, and the Maoist leadership is involving Nepali Congress leadership because they say a lot of orders were given under Deuba's prime ministership to the army, and army was as ruthless and inhuman as anybody else. Therefore, this is a question of mutual allegations and dragging everybody. So, the contention of the Maoist is that it should be dealt with as a kind of a huge transition which has taken place. It is not an ordinary criminal activity, and therefore let it be dealt by Truth and Reconciliation Commission, wherever if they say this is a real violation of certain norms or human rights, we will undergo punishment. Otherwise, you can't fix people on the basis of a criminal law. The second is, of course, the violation of the commitment which Mr. Oli had given. But I may mention one point here which many people may not like to endorse. The problem is that both Maoist and the UML are actually looking at each other to erode their respective bases. UML has always been arguing in a whispering manner that we will take all the Maoists on our side. The Maoists have been saying we are the real communists, we will take all the cadres on their side. There is an inherent competition and rivalry at the base level, not at the political level. Personally, they may have huge understanding with each other, and therefore in May, as Rakesh said very rightly, when the crisis came, I wrote an article and I said this is a temporary patch-up. It is going to bust again in one way or the other.
So now what is happening, the support which the Nepali Congress has extended to the Maoists, is that going to be a little more less temporary than what has been in the past?
Let me again give you my personal take on this. See, the transition in Nepal was brought about by a coalition between the Maoist and the Nepali Congress. And there has been a broad understanding if that coalition had sustained, Nepal would have moved much faster on constitutional changes and political transformations. Therefore, I am of the view personally, and I may be wrong, that the coalition between Maoists and the Nepali Congress, if it can be sustained and made creative, would actually be for the good of Nepal.
Prashant, would you agree with that?
No, I completely.
That will be good for Nepal. It's good for Nepal, and again, this arrangement is apparently on the same lines which Prachanda had with Oli, in the sense that after 10 months he's going to give way to a Nepali Congress government.
So I think there are two elements to it. One is the larger political principle involved, the other is the power sharing element involved. As far as the political principle is concerned, I completely agree with Muni sir. I think it is an opportunity. Oli was a disastrous prime minister. He did not reach out to the Madhesis despite 6 months of struggles in the plains. He has done little on the reconstruction front after the earthquake. He has encouraged a kind of very unhealthy nationalism, which is based on ethnic majoritarianism and resentment towards royalist nationalism and resentment towards India. So the man's departure is good news. And if Nepali Congress and Maoists, the first point of their understanding which they have just signed is addressing constitutional grievances, if they can take some steps to do it, I think it will be good. The challenge, however, is that for any constitutional amendment, you need a 2/3 majority. With Oli's party, the UML, in the opposition, it will be difficult to get a 2/3 majority. So there are challenges, but it will be a relatively more benign government than the last government that we have just seen. In terms of power sharing, there is that understanding that you referred to. For 9 months, Prachand will be Prime Minister. He will hold the local government elections, and then Mr. Deuba takes over and holds the provincial and national elections. Now, if this understanding works out smoothly we will see a period of stability. But Nepali politics is unpredictable. In 9 months, there will be enough people who would tempt Mr. Prachand to stay on in power. UML may tell him that, look, why don't you stay on? We'll support you. Misunderstandings may crop up between NC and Maoist. So we can't tell right now.
Any number of possibilities
Yeah.
which you're talking about. Mr. Rakesh Sood, what about the role of India in all these things? Prashant is now saying that going of Oli is the best thing which can happen. Would you agree with that? 1 second. The role of India.
I would agree because I share the assessment that Oli's tenure as Prime Minister has been an unhappy tenure, not just in terms of in terms of domestic politics in Nepal, but also in terms of India-Nepal relations, because I think Oli created a sense of Nepali nationalism. He found it easy to blame India for all his shortcomings. He failed to reach out to the Madhesis during the course of their agitation and blamed India for a blockade. So I think that in that sense, Oli's departure is probably a healthy sign. Now, but blaming India for shortcomings of political leaders in Nepal is not a new thing. It is not that Oli is the first one. In 2009, when Prachand quit the Prime Ministership, he also blamed India for the loss of his chair. And so I hope that this will be a more mature Prachand who will take over the reins of the Prime Ministership. And certainly, one of the challenges they will have is to repair the relationship with India. The NC, Madhesi, Maoist combined will have to repair the relationship with India, and I hope that they will find a willing partner in India to do that.
That's interesting, Mr. Tripathi. It is some of the commentators are actually saying that it's quite ironical now that India will probably be helping Prachanda to be after he becomes the Prime Minister. There is certain amount of India having a better deal, better understanding with Prachanda now in the present circumstances than they had with Oli. So you think that this irony will play out in a positive sense?
This will certainly play in positive sense, but there has been a continuity in Nepali politics of bringing politically hostile attitude towards India in times of especially political crisis. When the leadership of a particular party had problems, they blamed India, which according to me is not true. But India and Nepal relationships are so deep that we would like our relations to be stronger. In that context, Oli is the first Prime Minister who had been my friend for a long time, and I had especially requested him during my recent visit to Nepal that to take everybody along. He asked me, as a friend, I'm asking you what is the best course of action. I said, take all your people along, all political parties, and try and resolve the Madhes question. India is with you. India does not believe in destabilizing any government in Nepal. That because it doesn't help us. Only stable and prosperous Nepal is in favor of India.
But he was not able to do it.
No.
He was not
That
able to
false sense of nationalism, which is chauvinistic, is something which really destroyed that relationship, our relationship.
So Muni, do you agree with that?
See,
is that the way you look at it?
No,
What happened between India and Nepal in the worst? It is said that we are going through the worst, almost the worst kind of period in the ties between the two nations.
Couple of things. As I said earlier, that Mr. Oli was parading the royalist nationalism, where in order to save regime or in order to strengthen regime, you blame an external power, and this is what they had done, as Rakesh said very rightly. And I would say that even now, Mr. Oli is saying the same. Even now, he is saying that the crisis of his government is created because of India's encouragement. Having said that, I must be very frank in saying that I would be betraying my conscience and professional integrity if I say that India had no role in all these changes which have taken place in Nepal. We have had a role. We don't want to go into history at this stage. But certainly there were lapses committed on our part as well. And that's why it becomes very easy for ordinary Nepalese to accept that yes, this is what India's mischief is. Having said that, again I would say we must look forward to stability, because please recall the 2008-2009 incident when Prachanda had to go. Prachanda had to go for various reasons. But the fact remained that the coalition which brought about the transition between Girija Koirala and Prachanda, or the Maoist and the Nepali Congress, really broke down. And broke down soon after the elections of 2008. And it was the consequence of that breaking down of the coalition or mutual understanding between these two major forces that we have seen a series of instability.
Sir, fine. Why do you think that in the present circumstances, the same two forces have come back together? Why do you think they will be more sustainable this time?
No, because they don't have a political contradiction between each other. They have ideological contradictions.
No, this political contradiction was not there earlier?
No, they
Was there earlier and now it is...
You're taking me back into the history. It was the power sharing which disturbed the political coalition. It was not the ideological conflict which really disturbed the political coalition.
The ideological conflict is a given.
Yes, and it is given and it will persist. There is no doubt about it. But they, both Girija and Prachanda worked out a power sharing arrangement, and as Prashant said very rightly, that in Nepali politics, if you want to understand it at the base, it is the power sharing which decides almost every issue. As even now, why they have come out? Because of the power sharing. Why Nepali Congress and Maoist are gelling together? Because of a certain power sharing. And the moment you disturb this power sharing, everything else is put into the dustbin.
No, the power sharing which he is talking about, now Prachanda will become Prime Minister 10 months down the line.
9 months later.
9 months down the line, the Nepali Congress, Devba will be... The way in which Oli reneged on the promise, is that the reason why this is all happened?
Well,
the only reason?
That is a major reason. But I think we need to remember that the Nepali Congress and the Maoists had come together when they had come together in a peace agreement against the monarchy or against the palace. And immediately after the election, the Constituent Assembly election in 2008, as Professor Muni said, the arrangement broke down because the leader of the Congress party at that time, old man G.P. Koirala, he felt betrayed because he felt that Prachand had given him certain assurances and he felt that Prachand did not deliver on those. So actually, right at that time in 2008, the Nepali Congress went and sat in opposition. So since the time that the two came together to overthrow the monarchy, after that, they have not been together. So which brings me back to the point that I made earlier, that I hope so Mr. Koirala, G.P. Koirala, took that betrayal very personally. I can vouch for that. And I do hope that this time we have a more pragmatic leadership on both sides. We have a slightly wiser and a more chastened Prachand, and we have a more pragmatic Devba.
Okay. Prashant?
In this,
Yes, Mr. Tripathi.
see, there are certain statements of Prachand which are very important to note here. And these statements were made publicly. It is not any personal kind of a conversation. He made one statement very publicly in Delhi at the residence of one of politicians here, political leaders, in which all of us were present. He frankly said that I made many mistakes in my tenure as Prime Minister.
This was when?
This was 8 months ago.
Okay.
Then he said that I have learned how to rectify those blunders, not only mistakes, blunders that I made. And therefore, a mature leadership from Prachand is expected, and Devba would be becoming Prime Minister, I think, 4th time. So, Devba's seniority, experience, everybody knows. So, that way, this coalition of power sharing that Professor Muni is talking about can be far more stable than we expect in Nepalese politics.
Okay.
If I
Yes,
can just
Prashant.
flag, the one thing that brings people together is power sharing. The other thing is the fear of a common enemy.
Who
The
is the
common
common
enemy
enemy?
is UML.
Okay.
UML in the last 10 months has been able to consolidate and expand.
And this ultra-nationalism
It
which
has,
it has been created.
it has helped them in the hills, and UML has also been able to infiltrate across state institutions and have their men placed in different organs of the state. And there is a lot of insecurity among other political actors in Nepal. Professor Muni talked about the natural competition between the Maoists and the UML. The Congress also feels insecure. So one of the reasons why they may stay together for a while is because they want to keep the UML out. But we have to remember that in the next 18 months or 16 months, Nepal has to have 3 elections.
Exactly.
And when the local elections happen, if it happens, there's a lot of work to be done before holding the local elections. There will be a certain outcome of the local elections that can disturb power sharing permutations. So there are other variables that, that would indicate that, things may change. But right now, power sharing, the fear of a common enemy, and
is going to keep them together.
Is going to keep them together for at least some time.
Professor Muni?
No, this again relates to power sharing. For instance, besides 9 months circulation of the Prime Ministership, what has been agreed is that the local elections would be carried out under the Maoist leadership and the other 2 elections would be carried out under the Nepali Congress leadership, which again is going to the grassroots. One more point. UML is a party, and I think very rightly Rakesh hinted at that, that constitutional changes may be difficult. My understanding is UML is a party which finds very hard to remain out of power. And please don't forget that even now, when Prashant had gone away, Oli had made an offer of Prime Ministership.
You're already predicting some dramatic changes.
No. It has happened and said no. Please listen to me. Oli had already made an offer of Prime Ministership to Devba. Devba was waiting for his confirmation, which did not come. And awaiting that confirmation, then the deal between Maoists and the Nepali Congress was struck.
When was this?
After the deal, this is last 2 days. After the deal was struck, Oli said, "You have not waited." He said, "It is now too late," because this is what the whole dynamics is.
Okay, Mr. Sood, there is a third actor in all this, the Chinese role in all these things. Oli seemed to be getting closer to China than what India is very happy about. You think that is one of the reasons why? Because even already there are people who are saying, who are writing that India has played a role in the fall of Oli.
Well, as I think the other panelists have also said, we have seen that when there is this hyper-nationalism, or what Professor Muni called palace nationalism, royalist nationalism, it translates itself into anti-Indianism. Very closely linked to that is the playing of the China card, namely saying that we can get the kind of support we want from China. And Prime Minister Oli certainly played the China card very strongly. He said that China will supply 1/3 of Nepal's fuel and so on. None of this has happened. And even
President
the so-called
Xi Jinping is supposed to visit Nepal in the next couple of months.
We heard that during the Buddha Purnima, at Lumbini, there would be a very high level, it was never specified who, but a very high level Chinese presence. It failed to materialize. We've heard that there is a new transit agreement that has been tied up. There is nothing in the actual text of the agreement that was signed between Nepal and China. The port, the Chinese port, is not even mentioned by name. A transit requires customs arrangements, it requires a route to be identified. We all know the difficulties of the fact that infrastructure on the Nepal-Tibet border is a very poor infrastructure and cannot sustain trucks of more than the 6-wheel standard truck. Whereas what you need are containerized trucks, which are 18-wheel trucks or 22-wheel trucks. They can't move. So I think this business of the China card has certainly been overplayed by Prime Minister Oli. At the same time, I would like to say that China is certainly more active politically than it has been in the past. And one reason for that is that in the past, as long as the palace was there, as long as the monarchy was there, China found it convenient to get its ends met by just dealing with the institution of the monarchy. Now that the monarchy is gone, China is naturally reaching out to all the political forces in Nepal And certainly the left forces provide an ideological glue which it would like to capitalize on.
You want to?
What I want to say is that
I'll come to you.
it's very clear that India wants Oli out, and China would be happy to see this government continue. We saw this in May when the Chinese, for the first time, very directly dabbled in internal politics and put pressure on Prashant to stay on in this government. And this time also, I am told that in the last week, over the last week, there have been representatives who have come from Beijing and tried to persuade Prashant to stay on in this government. He has withstood that pressure. I am not suggesting that Delhi has engineered the ouster. I think there are natural, organic, domestic factors that have led to this. But Delhi is very pleased, and Delhi would be very pleased if Oli goes.
I'll come to you. Mr. Tripathi?
No, I have to just say one point about this China
Yes.
playing a big role in Nepal. See, in terms of supplies and economic growth and even cultural interaction and relationship, China can never play a role which is there between India and Nepal. That is not possible. Rakesh Sood just hinted at that. But what I'm saying is, in India also, there are many sections who overplay the China factor, which is incorrect. I would say it publicly that, see, Nepal is not merely landlocked country, it is actually India-locked country. See, our borders are so convenient borders, weather is good, infrastructure is good, as compared to Chinese. And there are certain other diplomatic factors, internal factors in China. You know what is the cost of fuel in Tibet? If it is $1 in mainland China, in Tibet it will be about $5-6. So how can they supply the fuel? So in terms of supply and economic development and cultural affinity,
The Nepal is, you say, will have to be dependent on India.
yes.
Muni?
Want to put two cautions.
The China factor.
Put two cautions here.
Yes.
On China factor, don't underestimate the Chinese resilience. You know, the Chinese have been cultivating politicians in all the political parties. And the Chinese stakes in South Asia, including Nepal, are much, much heightened today than what they were 10 years earlier during the king. Therefore, don't underestimate them to make efforts to cultivate even this combination which may come to power. Secondly, caution on India's side. I think the present situation in Nepal is a fluid one. And there are sections in India which have a different constitutional agenda for Nepal, which is of Hinduism and even revival of monarchy. I would urge them to be cautioned not to push in this agenda and let Nepal work out its own equations. Otherwise, we would be playing into the Chinese hands.
Very quickly.
No, I completely...
And also, you know, how do we, the distrust which is developed between India and Nepal, you think that it can be smoothened over?
Well, the distrust that has developed between India and Nepal, I think that will, at one level, it can be smoothened over quickly. We saw how quickly Prime Minister Modi, when he went in August of 2014, and the kind of reception he received.
But what happened later is...
Exactly. So we can see that political leadership can make an enormous impact. But then what we also have to see is that it has to be backed up by effective implementation on the ground. And there, I think, the fact that we have committed nearly $2 billion first during Prime Minister Modi's visit and then after the earthquake in the reconstruction pledge, which is waiting to be spent in the next 5 years, I think this, if we can effectively deliver on, will be the most effective way of countering the anti-Indianism.
Okay. I think on that note, we'll end. It's a very interesting development. What has happened in Nepal, we'll keep a close watch on how it will all develop. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.